It was a chilly February evening in New Orleans. Jackson Hayes, a middle-aged accountant with a quiet demeanor, was driving home after a long day at work. As he navigated through the dimly lit streets of the suburban district, he reflected on the monotony of his day. The soft hum of the car engine blended with the faint sounds of the city. Everything seemed routine, just another day, until he noticed the flashing red and blue lights of a police car in his rearview mirror. Surprised but compliant, Jackson pulled over to the side of the road. He hadn't been speeding, and his car was in perfect condition. As he came to a halt, two police officers emerged from the patrol car. Both were African American, their faces stern and their postures authoritative. Jackson rolled down his window as one of the officers approached, his flashlight beaming into Jackson's car. "Good evening, officers. Is there a problem?" Jackson asked politely, his voice steady but slightly confused. The first officer ignored the pleasantries and demanded, "License and registration." His tone was sharp, almost accusatory. Jackson quickly retrieved his documents and handed them over. As the officer examined the papers, the second officer began circling Jackson's car, his eyes scanning every detail. The tension in the air was palpable. "Where did you get this car?" the second officer asked abruptly, his voice carrying a note of suspicion. Jackson furrowed his brow, puzzled. "I bought it 5 years ago." "Why?" The officer smirked. "This neighborhood has seen a lot of thefts recently. It's not every day you see someone like you driving around here at this hour." The implication behind the words was clear, and Jackson felt a knot form in his stomach. He maintained his composure, though the situation was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. "I assure you, officers, everything is in order. You can see my paperwork," he said, gesturing to the documents still in the first officer's hands. But the officers weren't satisfied. They asked Jackson to step out of the vehicle. Reluctantly, he complied, stepping into the cold night air. As one officer began searching his car, the other kept a watchful eye on Jackson, his hand resting on his holster. "You won't find anything because there's nothing to find," Jackson said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We'll see about that," the officer replied curtly. The situation escalated when a passing pedestrian, a young woman, stopped to observe. She took out her phone and began recording. "This doesn't seem right," she called out. "He hasn't done anything." The officers ignored her, their focus remaining on Jackson and his car. The search continued, but it was clear they were operating more on suspicion than evidence. Jackson's frustration was mounting as the minutes dragged on. Suddenly, one of the officers found a small box under the passenger seat. Jackson immediately recognized it. "That's my daughter's lunchbox," he explained quickly. But the officer wasn't convinced. He opened it, revealing nothing but a few leftover snacks and a napkin. The officer scowled but didn't apologize. Instead, he muttered, "You got lucky this time." Jackson could feel his blood boiling, but he kept his composure, knowing that any sudden move could escalate the situation further. The young woman recording the scene stepped closer. "I've got everything on video," she said, her voice loud enough for the officers to hear. "If you don't stop harassing him, I'm taking this to the media." One of the officers turned to her, his expression stern. "Step back, ma'am. This is official business." But the woman didn't flinch. "Official business doesn't mean abusing your power," she shot back. At this point, the tension was unbearable. Jackson, still standing in the cold, felt a mix of humiliation and anger. He had done nothing wrong, yet here he was, treated like a criminal. After what felt like an eternity, the officers finally stepped away. "You're free to go," one of them said dismissively. No apology, No acknowledgement of their mistake, just a cold dismissal. Jackson got back into his car, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. The young woman approached his window. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I will be," Jackson replied, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Thank you for standing up for me." She nodded. "People need to see what's happening out here. I'll make sure this video gets out." As Jackson drove away, his mind raced. This wasn't just about him. It was about something bigger, a system that allowed such behavior to go unchecked. He knew he couldn't let this slide. He had to take action. Our story will continue in part 2. Stay tuned to see how Jackson pursues justice and what happens next. Thank you for joining us for this heartfelt story. If this act of kindness inspired you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of compassion, courage, and inspiration. Hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Together, let's spread kindness and make the world a better place. Take care, and we'll see you in the next story.